Next up, we have a TEDx veteran who also spoke at TEDx Stanford. Miss Rowena McCullough co-founded the Quest Scholars Program as an undergraduate at Stanford and led Quest as a CEO for 11 years. Her work is very broad in scope. She's worked as a management consultant at McKinsey Company, consulting scientist at the Environmental Defense Fund, and co-founder and vice president of content at the digital education publisher. I'm sure all of you guys have heard of Schmoop.com. Please welcome Miss Rowena McCullough.
Hi everyone, how's it going? Good. Well, thanks for having me here today. I was actually here at your high school with Schmoop, visiting some of your teachers actually a few years ago, and I was very impressed with your school and your teachers, so it's really good to be back here. I wanted to share with you some ideas today that can extend all the great work that you're already doing, basically to prepare yourselves for college and for life. And I have a framework I want to share with you that I've learned from our students in the Quest Scholars Program, which is a program that, as I mentioned, I co-founded with my husband Michael, who's sitting in the front here, at Stanford about 15 years ago. And we created this program for talented low-income high school students, mostly who are from single-parent households, and specifically, most of all, from first-generation households. So I want to share some lessons I learned from them, specifically about how to go through your high school and college years in a way that's both authentic and sincere, but also leads to great success in life. So can I just do a little poll? How many in here are freshmen? Oh, just a few. Okay, good. 2 of you. Maybe a few more. How about sophomores? Okay, juniors? All right, and seniors. Whoa, okay. Okay, so this talk actually applies to all of you. It applies not only to the years of high school that those of you who are not yet done have ahead of you, but also applies to people who are about to be freshmen in college or starting their first job. There's a lot of applicability in this model for all of you. So let's just get started. So as I mentioned, we have this program called Quest. This is a year here that 2001 where we had a small program at Stanford and a small program at Harvard. Now we have partners with 32 colleges and about 4,000 students at our colleges. Again, these are all talented low-income high school students, many of whom, almost all of whom are first-generation students. And they actually, our colleges are actually Princeton, MIT, Columbia, and many other Ivies and Ivy equivalents. And our students, for example, this past year, Stanford is welcoming 90 of our Quest Scholars into its freshman class. MIT took 79. And what I've learned and now, like I said, we have about 4,000 of them. In addition, the ones who are in college are doing very well and using a lot of the principles I'm going to describe to you today. In fact, we have a number of folks who have won great scholarships like Rhodes Scholarships, Marshall Scholarships, Fulbrights, etc., and a number of them who are already working in their professions. They're doctors and lawyers and engineers and working at some of the best companies in the world. So I want to kind of in this next few minutes share with you some principles that they've taught me in my observation with them. I feel like I've sort of seen like the best of America, seeing these Quest Scholars go through school, and I'd like to share that with you. But let's just do a little backdrop about American education right now, and specifically higher education. I'm sure a number of you have experienced or know the stress that a lot of kids go through in order to get into college and into graduate school. How many of you have felt stressed about college? Right. And as you know, it's ubiquitous and it's a big issue. And actually, the colleges are worried about it too, in the sense that a lot of times the students get to college and they're already pretty tired and they're already pretty stressed out. And as you've seen, you've probably seen a number of people who try to game the system and almost do things that compromise their own values in order to get in. And not everybody does this, but it's enough of an issue that folks are talking about it, colleges are talking about it. They're worried about, the fact that even something like public service can be considered an obligation and something to kind of manipulate or to contrive, rather than something that sort of comes from your heart or something that you really love. And so what I want to share with you is a whole different way of going through high school and college, where you can actually do things that you love and be energized and excited about them, and at the same time be preparing yourselves and developing the skills and qualities that will make you excellent applicants both to college, to graduate school, into your first job, and into your life. So the point is that you can actually do both of those things at once, and I want to share those principles with you now. And I'm going to start with a story with a student named Gerard. He's actually a Quest Scholar who's now in college, and he was a lot like you all sitting here in the room. He actually went to a math and science public schools, a magnet school, but Gerard, among other things, is also an artist. And so he decided that, at his school, even though he loved school, it turns out that he didn't feel like he had enough opportunity to express his artistic side and his artistic talents. So he and his friends, actually 6 of his friends, got together and created a t-shirt company. And there's Gerard on the left with his silkscreen machine, or silkscreen, and his t-shirts up on the right, and his team down here on the lower right. And he actually built this company from scratch with his friends. They learned they bought silkscreens, they went out and looked and met people in their community who were doing this. They developed their product, they're selling it now, and this company is growing. And they have a big vision for it in the next few years. But what's exciting is that Gerard did this, and he and his friends did this around something that they really cared about, they really loved. And in addition to being an amazing applicant for some of the best colleges in the world, he actually was also able to develop skills of entrepreneurship. And so what's wonderful about our US college system, as I mentioned at the Stanford TEDx talk that Sammy was at, is that colleges and graduate schools actually look for these qualities, not just your academic prowess or not just how well you do on tests, but actually on the other qualities that you can bring to the table, bring to the community. And that's actually true of jobs as well. Jobs don't just want people who are just computers in their brain. They want people who actually can do things in the world. And so this project really set Gerard up for success, not just in college, but really in life. So now I want to turn the conversation back a little bit to you and have you all think about, imagine something that you really care about, something you really love, and maybe it's sports or maybe it's art or math, and imagine that you have like 4 years of a blank slate, no matter where you're starting. You can be starting college, you can be starting high school, you can be in the middle of high school, it doesn't matter. This approach actually applies to everybody who's here. So think about, while I'm giving you this framework, think about something that you could be doing, that you can actually create around a passion of yours, that you can build and turn into something extraordinary, where even what might be considered a normal interest, you can develop into something that's extraordinary and truly individual for you, and actually makes you into not only a better applicant, but also a better person and the best kind of expression of yourself. That's the idea. At Quest, were always focused on helping students be excellent both inside and out. That's so important. And I know, when we would talk to high school students, we'd always ask, how many people think that how many people see a lot of fakeness around? How many people see kids not acting like they really feel? And it's really pretty common, right? But in fact, you can actually do a lot and be genuine and authentic and still be very successful. So, and these projects give you an opportunity to do that. So the framework I want to describe to you actually has this overarching principle, which is aim at life, but it also has 7 steps. So we're going to go through those, and I'm going to use Gerard's story and some other student stories as well. And I encourage you guys to imagine yourselves kind of developing your own project around something you love while we go through these steps. But the main thing is aim at life. If you think about it, a lot of times at this age, at your age in particular, people start to really, really focus on college as though it's like the holy grail. And the parents are all stressed about it, and the kids are all stressed about it. And the idea is that you're aiming at college as like some major endpoint. And it is an important step in life. It's a very important endpoint, and important to try to do well in order to get to a good school. But in fact, if you are developing your skills and qualities and your personal, the other aspects of yourself that colleges are also looking for, then you will actually become a great college applicant in the process of trying to become the best of who you are as a person. So aiming at life, what we learned from our wonderful Quest scholars, many of whom have done, like I said, very, very well, is that the qualities and skills that they developed as they were creating their projects and developing their creative entrepreneurial sort of activities and products and projects is that they actually were becoming great college applicants in the process of doing that. So whereas the other way around, if you're just aiming at a great college application, you may be missing a lot of growth that you could be doing in these next 3, 4, 5, 7, 8 years that will set you up for success in life. So aiming at life is really a powerful principle. The first step in this 7-step process is start young. And no age is too young, I think, to really think about. And if you guys have younger brothers and sisters, you can share this with them. No age is really too young to try to create something wonderful with something you care about. And that just means everybody has passions, everyone has things that they love, but actually developing something that you can share with other people is very powerful. And if you start young, then you get sort of momentum, and you're not just doing it to get into school, you do it because you're trying to become a better person, you're trying to become, sort of the best who you can be. And those of you who are about to start college, it's definitely not too late. In fact, I have a lot of parents that I talk to who I describe this framework to, and they kind of say, "Ooh, I need to do something like that too." So in fact, no age is too old and no age is too young. But those of you who are starting college are actually ahead of the curve. If you start to apply these principles when you get there, it's actually going to be very powerful. You'll see the difference as you go through school. Actually, Gerard, our t-shirt student, started art at a very young age, but then he taught himself the Adobe products, Photoshop, and Illustrator when he was in 8th grade. So by the time he got to high school, he was ready to kind of jump into this company idea with his friends and launch it. Okay, the second principle in this 7-step process is start where the energy is. That means start with where your energy is. Start with what you love, but it could also be something that stresses you out or something that frustrates you about your community, or something that makes you mad. For example, if you saw injustice, or if you don't like the way that we're treating the environment, that's also where your energy can be, and that's where you should start. I have a wonderful student who went to Stanford. She's actually not a Quest scholar, but she reminded me of one, so I'll tell you her story. She actually looked around her community and saw that a lot of kids who are in foster care had to go from home to home in chaotic situation, from chaotic situation to chaotic situation, and they actually didn't have anything stable to hold on to, and so she and her friends got together and hand-sewed a bunch of blankets for the foster kids in their community so they could take something with them whenever they were moved from home to home. And she said that project never felt like a burden to her. That project never felt like it, was something she had to do to get into this college. Not at all. In fact, it was something she very much loved, and it got her through high school in a way that she could be very passionate about. And by the way, she did extremely well and ended up at Stanford and ended up doing a lot of other entrepreneurial things at Stanford as well afterwards. The third principle is create something that you can love and be proud of. And I kind of alluded to this earlier, but the idea here is to actually take what you care about and turn it into something that other people can care about. Basically, share it with other people. And when you start to have to do that, then you have to learn new skills like collaboration and persuasion, trying to convince other people to care about it too. And it forces you to kind of manifest what's already in your head and what's in yourself. And if you do that, you'll find that a whole other kind of learning takes place. Using resources creatively, this means looking around, both to the people that are around you who might be able to help you, and the sort of things right under your nose in terms of sort of tangible objects that can help you create a project, for example. But it also means ask for help, and it means ask for help in places you may not even think people would say yes. So we have a great student who's currently at Brown right now, who created a program to teach math using the vehicle of basketball, because he realized that the kids that he was tutoring in his school weren't really into math, and they just didn't care because it wasn't relevant. So he decided to use basketball to teach math, and he reached out to the National Basketball Association, the NBA, and so now he's partnered with the NBA and a major toy company, and they're rolling this out across middle schools. They're launching it in a few months, and he's created something amazing around his excitement about math and basketball, and tried to make it relevant, and he reached out to resources creatively. So you never know what's going to happen if you just ask. Okay, these next two principles are risk and learn to trip and fail well. These are basic principles of entrepreneurship. Anyone who's in this room and who knows anything about entrepreneurship, I'm sure you can relate to this, which is that these are critical skills for success. And for me, one of the things I love about these kinds of projects is that you can actually take a bunch of risks, and it's not going to end up on a transcript, it's not going to end up on a score report. Nobody has to know about it unless you want to tell them about it. So in some ways, it's actually pretty risk-free, but that means you can push your boundaries, it means you can test yourself, it means you can do something that makes you uncomfortable. And the stakes in some ways are not as high because you're not going to be worried about getting a bad grade or anything like that. And most importantly, these skills are so important for when you get out into the workforce that you don't want to be struggling with, the first time you actually really fail something is when you're on your first job, because that's a lot more stressful than it is when you're able to create your own project and have a lot more control over what happens with your project. The final one is play, and what I mean by play is not just kind of be frivolous and not care about what you're doing, but in fact this is more about engagement and about flow. I don't know if you know anybody who goes to work because they love it and they would even go to work even if they didn't get paid. I mean, I know that's not everybody, but there are certain people who find that thing in their life that they love so much that they would do it even if they didn't get paid or even if other people didn't know about it. That's the kind of feeling that would be really cool for you guys to develop in these kinds of projects, because once you learn what that feels like, then you start to have really high standards for your own life, for your own jobs in the future, for your own sort of relationships. You start to feel that, in fact, you can, in some ways, have it all in the sense that you can have a very meaningful work and project that you can be very successful at, but that also makes you happy and fulfills you in lots of ways. So I think this is a really key principle, and have high standards for yourself when you're doing this. If it's not fun, you should switch it up and change and do something else. Okay, and the final thing I want to say just to wrap up this piece is that the students that I described to you actually did very well in school. It turns out that these kinds of projects make you more engaged rather than less engaged in the other things you need to do in order to move forward in your life. So in fact, they did very well in school. They started to care more about their relationships. They started to care more and learn more about themselves and what really made them happy and excited. So in fact, there's a lot of benefits to this, even beyond the actual project itself. It turns out that you get to become a better, the best expression of who you are at this time of your life. And it's very exciting, and we've seen it work time and time again with some of the most exceptional students, not only in the country, but in the world. So I want to just encourage and challenge all of you to sort of imagine doing this kind of thing, both in high school and college. And stay in touch with me and keep me posted. If anybody does any great projects, I want to hear about it. So thank you very much.